Hey guys, before we get started, I wanted to say a huge thanks to all the support I got on my last video. On other news, we also hit 1,000 subscribers, so think of this as a 1000k special because I will not do a video this long ever again. Second chances my way. In no way is this me trying to replace voice from under the covers. I did start this video before they got exposed. But I won't lie, them getting exposed did kind of make me hurry up this video a bit. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and try and make your predictions once I give out the participants, and join the Discord. We really need VAs for a Disventure camp if it was good part 10. Anyways, onto some rules for second chances my way. I will be picking 2 boys and 2 girls from each generation, leaving out the fans from season 5, because that season isn't even over. But if the season was to be over, I'd probably pick Aubrey, maybe Finn, probably Olivia, even though she hasn't even been voted out by the time of writing this. I also won't give challenges too much thought, at all, this is just a heads up. And I won't go into depth about every single interaction that happens. I'll mainly only talk about game moves and plot stuff. Also, at the end of the video, I will explain why I wrote the characters the way I did, because for most of them, spoiler, they're not in character at all. Anyways, I didn't pre-plan my plan out. I sort of just started writing and hoped it would all make sense. And it kinda did. Also, I won't bother with a host plot or anything, I don't care. Now, you can't have a second chances season without a cast. And these are my season 1 picks for second chances my way. First pick from season 1 is Lil. She really felt like the main character up until her elimination. Nick's returning, he's immensely popular. Nicky Doodah. Dan. He has a lot of promise, and I do actually like him despite everyone finding him bland. His stick is that he's smart, but Alec existed in season 1, so I guess he couldn't really be the smart guy, because Alec was game smart. Dan's smart in the way that that guy. Oh my god, can I really not remember anything from Total Drama season 4? The guy who's best friends with the mic, the guy in the red hoodie. I want to say Sam, but I know that's the gamer boy. You know who I'm on about. You know him. Yeah, he's smart like that, so yeah. And he's also a hacker for the FBI. I feel like this could play into his character. My final pick for season 1 is Ashley. I couldn't really pick anyone else. Yeah, I know she's been in All-Stars, but look at the season 1 cast. You literally cannot pick anyone else. Who am I going to bring back? Drew. Season 2. Maggie. Love her in the remake. I hate her in the beta, but I really do actually enjoy her in the remake. She's like a real character now. I'm also bringing back Carol. I loved her in the beta and in the remake. She's just great. Heads up, I'm kind of going to write her like Eva. I'm not even going to save it for the end of the video. When you see Carol, just think Eva and Carol mixed in together with some passiveness for some reason. Kai, he's here. He's a guy who exists. I wonder if he'll be important. Oliver. Yeah, it makes no sense to bring him back either, but again, look at the season 2 cast. You can literally not bring... Everyone else is an all-star, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. For season 4, Ted should have obviously gone further in season 4. He's amazing, he's great. Alessio, he shouldn't have gone further in season 4 because he only got better upon his elimination, but it's so much so that he gets a spot in this season. Linda, she's amazing, she's funny. And Ivy, I loved Ivy. Honorable mentions on people who could have came into the season. Tristan, they obviously could have came back. Zayd. My next pick is Zayd, and yeah, I know he goes far, further than Spencer. But despite his high placement, you can really argue he should be here. I also considered Hunter for a few seconds, but again, who are we kidding? Here are the teams. The way I designed the teams were they're not randomized. I just tried to split up everyone from their main duo, kind of. I was gonna do this thing in my Discord where it's a poll. What should I name the teams, guys? Because currently I've got them down as Team X and Team Y, and I kinda actually am used to those names now. So, this is Team X. Lil, Ashley, Kai, Carol, Ted, and Linda. Yes, you may be noticing there's a few duos here, that being Lil and Ashley, Ted and Linda. So by extension, Kai and Carol would have to become a duo. Team Y. Nick, Dan, Maggie, Oliver, Ivy, and Alessio. This team's more jumbled up. There isn't any clear dynamics here. Also, I'm just realizing now, I've got 2 from each generation in each team. I just realized that's completely unintentional, by the way, but because I'm trying to split up everyone from their generations, like their main dynamics, right? I have no idea why I split up Lil and Nick. I should have really split up Lil and Ashley. That would have made more sense, but yeah. That was completely by accident. Anyways, yeah, a cast of 12. It's small, but whatever. Anyways, this is hosted by Derek, because, you know, Second Chance's Redemption Island. He's also basically going to be a Chris surrogate, so yeah, just think Chris McLean, kind of. Anyways, with all this monologue, let's get on to episode 1. Everyone gets acquired to their new teams. Team X has some obvious pairings aside from Kai and Carol. Team Y may as well be strangers, but nonetheless, Derek introduces them to their first challenge. Yeah, we're going straight into a challenge because I did not care at episode 1. Creating a movie. Yeah, I know. Original. Action totally didn't do this. But still, this challenge allows for loads of character interaction off the bat. Lil and Ashley would immediately catch up, which catches the suspicion of Carol, who realizes she may as well have been alone. Linda tries to strike up a conversation with Ted, proposing an alliance, but Ted responds with rejection, saying he likes Linda as a person, but can't align with a 2-time backstabber. He won't do that to himself again. Kai, I don't know, he does something challenge related, I guess. By the way, I'm not sidelining Kai, I just want him to come alive later. On Team Y, Ivy tries to take charge of the movie challenge. After all, she is an actor. Alessio follows in suit, but Nick has a problem with it. He remembers how in season 4, Ivy lost their team the challenge due to her ego and arrogance. Due to this, Nick suggests someone else should take charge, and that someone is Dan. Dan's unsure at first, but he realizes this is his chance to make his stand. Last time he played too passively and watched as everyone else controlled his game. Now it's time for him to be in control. He suggests Ivy be main actor since, you know, she is an actor. Alessio should do background music, and the others, I don't know, it shouldn't be too important because somehow Team Y would lose the challenge, be it something to do with Derek disliking Oliver, which isn't true, but I'm sure you can get away with it. Oliver messing something up and then spiraling to prove himself. In fact, yeah, second sounds better, but I know that arc kind of already existed and happened, but who cares? He gets eliminated and realizes he just needs to leave the survival show industry altogether. Maggie also realizes she's kind of on the outskirts because Dan and Nick are basically a duo now, and same for Ivy and Alessio. These are the current teams: Lil, Ashley, Kai, Carol, Ted, Linda, and then Team Y: Nick, Dan, Maggie, Ivy, and Alessio, with Oliver being our first boot. I just want to say for this first episode, I didn't know the format. Like, episode 2 has the format I want to use, by the way. It's like way more in-depth and has a lot of more interaction. I should have probably said that before reading episode 1, because episode 1's 2 seconds. I'm presuming this is going to be a very long video. So, yeah. Sit tight for that. Sit tight for that. Episode 2. On Team X, Kai finds Carol talking to her animal friends. Because Kai's a druggie and chill like that, he and Carol bond over their love for nature/animals. Carol says to herself that this island is perhaps not too bad after all. Ashley confides in Lil she's sort of feeling a bit down, seeing as she's the only person here to be on 2 previous seasons, including All-Stars. Yet she's still here at this island despite being an All-Star. Maybe she really was just a Rosa stand-in. Lil reassures her though, she's not just a placeholder. She's here because she was robbed in All-Stars, and she's loved. The fans want her here. This is her true second chance, even though it's technically her third. Linda keeps trying to strike up conversations with Ted, but you know, he kinda keeps avoiding them. This makes Linda approach Lil and Ashley because they are classy girls, and makes Ted approach, you know, Kai and Carol because, you know, then they're not with Linda. Splitting their team in half, 3-on-3. Team Y would have Nick and Dan discussing how they need to push Maggie to their side, with Ivy and Alessio coming to the exact same conclusion. Maggie is torn between both sides because both sides really do need her, but perhaps a bit of power is what she wants right now. P.S. it is not. Derek reveals this next challenge is a battle royale between the 2 teams. No one sits out because, you know, well, that's stupid. The rules are simple. Everyone gets paint guns and the last camper remaining, their team wins. Lil, Ashley, Ted enter a cave to sneak attack anyone who enters it. Kai, Carol, Linda just walk around praying they encounter someone. Linda takes this opportunity to remind Kai and Linda that Lil and Ashley have links to Nick from the other team, which could become dangerous for them at Merge. Meanwhile, on the other team, Nick, Dan, and Maggie walk around the lake looking for opponents. This is a time when Nick confesses in confessional that in season 1 he's pissed that he got played by a little girl. Fiore. He's been awaiting the day he returns. Ivy and Alessio just talk about how season 4 went and then bond over their love for music. Ivy says she misses Zayd, and Alessio reassures her that Zayd will be watching her with a smile. Just then, Kai, Carol, and Linda encounter Ivy and Alessio, catching them off guard. Carol snipes Ivy off the map instantly and rejoices, but Kai pushes her to take cover after Alessio begins shooting back like a crazed individual. Carol is about to punch Kai for pushing her, but calms down and thanks him. She can appreciate the sentiment. Linda says she thinks she has a shot and runs out from behind the rock to spray. Oh my god, my script is horrible. I can't read this because you know the actual thing says Linda says she thinks she has a shot and runs out from behind the rock cover to spray Linda. Linda sprays Linda. The script is horrible. Linda shoots into the air 20 times and not a single shot lands on target. Alessio just shoots her once and Linda is out of the game. Alessio gets a bit too excited in confessional, claiming he's now a competition beast. Kai and Carol was going to chase him, but they have no idea where he actually went because they actually expected Linda to kinda actually get him out of the game. So they just run in some random direction to look for Alessio. Nick, Dan, and Maggie walk it down the river, which is next to a cave, which she entered to search for contestants. Maggie reveals she's scared of the dark, to which Nick chuckles. Nick's chuckle alerts Lil, Ashley, and Ted that the cavalry has arrived. They gun down Maggie instantly because she's a big target. Nick and Dan begin shooting back, but they're kind of at a disadvantage because they can barely see their attackers in the dark. Ashley shoots down Dan and lets out a whippy-ki-yay or whatever cowgirls say, and Nick screams, "Ashley!" And little Ashley Ted walk into the limelight, telling Nick to pass over his gun, which he does. Ashley asks him what does he want, and he says he wants to have an alliance at Merge. They all got fucked over by Fiore in their previous season. Well, Ted didn't because he wasn't there, but spiritually he did. They all agreed to this merge alliance and Ashley points a gun at Nick, but Nick pleads that he's about to be voted out of his team. He isn't, guys. Nick's lying. He needs to prove himself this challenge. He needs to win this challenge. Ted laughs because there's no shot they're gonna let him go, but Lil tells Ashley to let him walk. Also, in this entire exchange, Nick and Lil kinda keep glancing back and forth at each other, like in a very weird way. Anyways, Nick mates like a pomni and finds the exit. These are who are left, by the way, for each team. Lil, Ashley, Kai, Carol, Ted are left for Team X, and for Team Y, only Nick and Alessio are left. Speaking of Nick and Alessio, they bump into each other and kinda realize they're the only two people left on their team, so they also realize their team is completely buns. They plan to do Linda's field technique of a last charge because they've essentially already lost the challenge, but just then they hear a faint voice. It's Kai. They find Kai and Carol who are walking around like sitting ducks, discussing how they wish they spoke more in season 2, and then Nick and Alessio blast them into Kingdom Fuck, making it a 2v3. Luckily enough, Nick knows where the final 3 are. Alessio asks how he knows where they are, but Nick says he just overheard them in the cave, but he was too scared to charge alone. Alessio struggles to believe that. Nick doesn't seem like the type of person to rationalize his thoughts, but hey, what does he know? They begin spraying blindly in the cave, eliminating Ted and Ashley. Lil tries to make a run for it, but Nick ultimately shoots her, winning them the challenge. Team Y, consisting of Nick, Dan, Maggie, Ivy, and Alessio, rejoice about their first win, praising Alessio and Nick. Nick gets overly excited at all the praise, and Dan peeps it on the low. He's realizing Nick is probably not a long-term ally, but he can't really pick and choose right now. Dan goes off with Maggie to go idol hunting because that's the thing they do together now. Team X, consisting of Lil, Ashley, Kai, Carol, Ted, and Linda, return from the challenge in complete disarray. Ashley is frustrated. They somehow lost after having a 3-person advantage, while Kai and Carol are so embarrassed that they got caught lacking out in the open, they just go dead silent. Linda comforts everyone saying it isn't their fault, which causes Ted to panic. Linda asks if he's proposing they work together, and Ted clarifies that he still doesn't trust her, but he trusts being on the bottom even less. Ted points out that Ashley and Lil are practically inseparable and how they have a clear connection to Nick on the other team. If those three merge together, they will have too much influence. Linda smirks, impressed Ted finally came around. So Linda goes to speak to Kai and Carol privately. She explains that whilst Ashley and Lil act nice, they already have outside connections waiting for them at merge. She warns them that if Team X enters merge united behind them, then everyone else becomes expendable. Carol immediately understands the concern, whilst Kai is more hesitant, saying Ashley seems cool. Linda responds with saying nice people can still run the game. Are you willing to put Maggie's game at risk? Elsewhere, Lil talks with Ashley and Ted about the vote. Ashley assumes Kai and Carol is like the obvious elimination, as Linda could be a good shield, but Lil isn't fully convinced. She notices Ted has been unusually quiet ever since the challenge and realizes he knows he's stuck in the middle. Lil suggests they all vote Kai, but Ted finally speaks up and says just vote Linda, she's a snake. Lil and Ashley agree. After all, they do need to force a tie, but Lil suspects this vote won't go as planned. At elimination, Derek is visibly entertained by how tense the groups have become after only 2 challenges. He reveals the votes that Ashley is eliminated in a 4-2 vote. This was gonna obviously happen, but this wasn't so obvious for Ashley. She's shocked. Lil looks devastated whilst Ted avoids eye contact entirely. Kai and Carol exchange nervous glances, not fully realizing they just shifted the entire power structure of their team. Linda tries to hide her relief with a "don't you know something, girls, lesbian." Before leaving, Ashley hugs Lil and tells her not to play dumb. Qualities like honesty and loyalty won't get her anywhere. These are now the teams. Team X has Lil, Kai, Carol, Ted, and Linda, with Team Y having Nick, Dan, Maggie, Ivy, and Alessio. At the start of episode 3, Ivy's singing to Maggie, but Maggie joins in. Ivy's surprised. Maggie can sing? Who knew? They duet and wake up Nick, who's kinda already angry for some reason. Can't you guys just keep quiet? I'm trying to get more beauty sleep. I'm never trying to do a Nick voice again. Maggie and Ivy giggle because what's beautiful about Nick? And then Derek interrupts everyone on the speakers. Derek calls all the campers to some specific deserted spot. He says he hopes you all had a fun searching for the idol because it hasn't been hidden. Maggie sighs. Him and Dan spent a whole 4 hours yesterday searching. Derek reveals that today's challenge is called Advantage Galore. Advantages will not be hidden on the island for the day. It's up to you guys to find him. Linda asks how will they win the challenge if there's no win condition. Derek says if you let him finish, he would finally explain that you can win the entire team immunity by giving him a statue with his face on it. I apologize, guys, if I sound so dead. It's 2 a.m. It's 2 a.m. Team Y immediately disperses. Dan and Maggie run together immediately in a frenzy. They seem really eager to find this advantage, so much so they kind of forgot about Nick. Nick peeps how close Dan and Maggie are getting without him and wonders his position in the game. He approaches Ivy and Lassie with a simple hi, and Ivy bursts out laughing. He must be stupid to think we would go advantage searching with him. Alessio lets him though, because, they did bomb last challenge after all. Ivy says fine begrudgingly. Why did I add this word into the script? Begrudgingly? I can't even say it. And they all head out. Team X, on the other hand, is somehow more divided. Ted and Linda run in opposite directions immediately. They have zero trust for each other despite working together last round. Meanwhile, Kai and Carol stay together, running in a different direction, leaving Lil all alone. Lil at the moment, she's really pissed. Her entire team targeted her only ally, and if she doesn't get a good advantage soon, she worries she may be an easy vote. The first advantage found is an extra vote advantage. It is found by Nick, Ivy, and Alessio. Nick grabs it first, saying he's found it, but Alessio snatches it off him, saying, "Don't you mean we found it?" And Ivy snatches it off Alessio, saying, "She'll just hold on to it for now." Nick snatches it off her, and so on and so forth. Finally though, Ivy grabs it, putting an end to all the chicanery, saying they should all just alliance, but for real this time. If the person carrying it gets eliminated, they should just give it to whoever they're closest to. Alessio and Nick look to each other, and they both agree. Ivy confesses he trusted Alessio up until now, but after that look she just peeped between Alessio and Nick, it's kind of weird because it's they haven't spoke. Why are they rioting each other? Oh, so by the way, it's a whole new day of me for recording, so if everything sounds weird now, I don't care. The team swap advantage is then found by Dan and Maggie. Sure, it isn't an idol, but at least it's something. Dan suggests to Maggie that they lied to Nick that they found the idol. Maggie has no idea why they lied to Nick, but hey, she's not one to disagree, so she agrees. I should also explain how the team swap advantage works. It just, like, team swaps the next two eliminated players. For example, let's say Nick was to be eliminated, then the other team loses and Lil gets eliminated. They just swap places. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay. The immunity idol is then found by Lil, who rejoices. This is just her luck. This is literally just what she needed. Kai and Carl find the team immunity statue thingy of Derek's face in a crocodile's mouth and wins their team the challenge, so their team's safe from elimination. Much to the rejoice of Lil, who's kinda going crazy, and dismay of Alessio and Ivy, who are kinda realizing they're fucked. Alessio approaches Nick to ask if he'll vote with them. Nick agrees. He isn't even trying to trick Alessio either. Sure, he hates Ivy for some reason, but he actually wants to befriend Alessio. He thinks this anyway before going to Dan and Maggie, who lie they have the idol. Nick wonders if he should flush the idol, but the fact that Dan and Maggie told him means they trust him enough. Sure, he's on the outskirts of his own alliance, but he should play it safe for now. Nick goes back to Ivy and Alessio and tell them to do Maggie, but Maggie and Dan decide to do Ivy with Nick. He's torn between the two because he doesn't really know what to do. Ivy tells Alessio she really doesn't trust Nick and begs for Alessio to flip. But Alessio reassures her that there's no way in hell that Nick would betray them. She asks how can he be so sure, and he reveals Nick is very similar to Ted. Despite their character inspiring, like, no trust, they're actually decent people underneath. Anyways, Nick betrays Alessio and Ivy is voted out in a 3-2 vote. Nick now knows he either flushed the extra vote advantage or Alessio has it. He was going to reveal this to Dan, but he decided against it because he barely trusts Dan anyways, and it wouldn't help his game. So this is who we have by the end of episode 3. On Team X, we have Lil, Kai, Carol, Ted, and Linda, with Lil having the idol. On Team Y, we have Nick, Dan, Maggie, and Alessio, with Dan having the team swap advantage and Alessio having the extra vote. It's the morning and Alessio is screaming at Nick. "What the hell was that? I trusted you." Nick asks Alessio to calm down and reassures him that he can still trust him. He's still in the game after all and hasn't outed his extra vote advantage, so why distrust him now? So Nick suggests and reveals they should just work together to flush the idol that Dan and Maggie found. Alessio wonders if he can truly ever trust Nick again, and Nick tells him he has no choice really. Nick confesses he doesn't even get why Alessio doesn't trust him. Dan and Maggie talk about what they should do with their advantage, and realize they should just probably swap Nick to the other team, since despite his mask of allegiance, he keeps hanging around the enemy, Alessio. On Team X, Lil is catching breakfast by herself until Kai approaches her with concern, wondering about how she's doing. Lil admits she feels kinda outcasted, and that each time she plays she feels like she's been targeted from the get-go. Kai says that's because people recognize her strength and courage, that makes her a threat. Lil smiles. Whenever she's next down, Kai reassures her that he has her back. Which leads to Lil and Kai bringing back breakfast for the rest of Team X, where they all play 21. Derek gets pissed at how lovely Team X is going, so reminds Ted in private of how dirty he got used by Linda last season. Ted now has a newfound vengeance and wants to make Linda pay for last season. Today's challenge is simple, a fashion design contest, designing I'm copying episode 10 of season 5. Whatever, designing an outfit, best outfit wins. Linda immediately suggests that she takes the lead on this one, as she has a better fashion sense than everyone on her team. No one agrees on the better fashion sense thing, but they do just let her be lead like no one really wants to be. She says she'll design the outfit, Ted and Carol will gather materials, and Kai and Lil, they can go spy on the other team or something, gain some information. Linda is clearly discarding Lil and Kai from the challenge, which saddens Lil, but Kai says it'll be fun. Meanwhile, Ted and Carol head out to try and collect some purple colors, but I have no idea what in the forest is purple. Carol says there is some exotic plant or something at camp which squirts out purple ooze, and they set out their sights for it. On Team Y, Alessio suggests he draws the outfit concept, since, he is an artist. He asks Maggie to model, which she hesitates about but ultimately agrees. Her self-confidence in season 2 has greatly improved. Nick and Dan are on material duty, much to the dismay of both of them. They haven't publicly or even privately said to one another how they don't trust each other at all, but there's definitely a mutual feeling, a mutual acknowledgement of the hate. Dan plays it cool and says we should look for green colors, and Nick agrees. On their way out, Nick and Dan bump into Lil and Kai, because they are spying on them. Dan, alarmingly loud, asks why are they at their side of the camp, and Lil begs them to keep quiet. Kai says they are here to talk about the merge. Dan snorts, as if. Nick says they should hear them out, as he smiles at Lil. Kai peeps this smile and, he's happy about it. Dan asks what their plans for the challenge are, and Lil says, we can't reveal that. Some of us are on the chopping block. Dan replies with saying, if you can't hack not being in a failing position in your own team, how will you even survive till merge? Before rolling his eyes like a cunt he is. Kai defends Lil and asks Dan what's going into him. He watched season 1 and Dan wasn't like this. Dan replies arrogantly, this season is called second chances. I have a second chance. If I play the exact same way, then I don't deserve to be here. Nick says that's enough, and Nick and Dan head out to look for green materials. While this is happening, Ted and Carol have just found their purple ooze and wrap it in a leaf. They start running back to base. Seems like this challenge was going to be easier than anticipated. Linda was still struggling on her design. Turns out she's not really an artist, but Alessio has already finished his design. Because, he is an artist. In an isolated forest area thingy, Nick confronts Dan. What the fuck was that? What do you mean? Dan replies. There was no need for you to be so rude to Lil and that other guy. Dan replies saying, listen, I'm sorry for your girlfriend's failing position in the game. I just was telling her how it is. Nick grabs him and says, first, Lil is just a friend. And second, who are you feeling like? Dan says he's feeling like a guy who's being betrayed by Nick of all people. You think I don't see you and Alessio yapping from morning to dusk, but you insult my intelligence by acting like I'm none the wiser? Nick says they don't discuss the game, they just have similar interests. Dan rolls his eyes. Here again with the lies. What are you even planning to do with Alessio? What could he have that trumps mine and Maggie's idol? Nick looks towards the floor. Dan makes a really good point, but Dan is clearly off the rails right now, so it's best to keep a distance. Nick says, look, we don't have to like each other to work together, alright? And it's the same vice versa. If you don't trust me, that's your choice. But I've done nothing to you. Lil and Kai spy on Maggie trying out different model poses. Lil says Maggie is really beautiful and that Kai is a lucky guy, to which he smiles. Kai prays Maggie makes it to the merge and says he needed to see her. They rarely spend time apart usually, so the game has been really taxing on them. Lil says that's adorable and they go back to their camp. Derek announces there's 5 minutes left, but Team Y hasn't even got materials yet and Team X doesn't even have a design, resulting in both of their team losing. Looks like they both will be going to elimination separately. Team X, consisting of Lil with the idol, Kai, Carol, Ted and Linda, are in a panic. The obvious vote is Lil, but Kai doesn't want to vote her, and since Kai doesn't want to vote her, Carol won't either. Ted wouldn't mind doing Lil, but he wants Linda out the game and everyone in his team won't oppose that. Team Y isn't in the same panic per se. It's obviously Nick and Alessio voting against Dan and Maggie. Maggie confronts Dan on why he needed to confront Nick on being a bum. Maggie asks Dan on why he needed to confront Nick for being bum buds with Alessio. It didn't matter what Nick did as long as he kept voting with them. Dan says he's played this dance before and Nick was always going to betray them eventually. The question is, who do they vote for? Nick and Alessio settle for voting Dan. Merge is right around the corner and they wouldn't mind keeping Maggie as an ally. Alessio also decides this is the perfect time to use his extra vote advantage. Dan and Maggie decide to do Nick, but if all fails, they are safe because of the team swap advantage. Maggie's a bit worried though that if she's eliminated, Dan wouldn't use the advantage to save her, but Dan reassures her that he would. Time for tribal! Team X lynch Linda 4-1, and in a surprise with Alessio using his extra vote advantage, Dan is eliminated 3-2. But Dan does his team swap advantage thing, swapping him and Linda, so yappa yappa dappa. This episode was redundant. Moving on. These are the new teams, by the way. Team X, Lil with the idol, Kai, Carol, Ted and Dan. Team Y, Nick, Linda, Maggie, and Alessio. Moving on to episode 5, Linda gets used to her new team, greeting Alessio and asking for the rundown. Alessio tells her this team is messy as hell and that Nick essentially runs it now, and Maggie is essentially kinda on the chopping block. Linda smirks as she hatches an idea. Meanwhile on Team X, Dan is pissed. He has no relations to anyone on this team aside from Lil and Kai, which he screamed at only a day prior. He needs to change his game drastically right now, or at least pretend to. Dan approaches Lil and Kai and says he's sorry for how he was acting before. It's just he's been dealing with stuff on his team which had him riled up. Lil says it's fine and asks what's the dynamics like on his other team. He said his other team was horrible aside from Maggie, of course. She was his only true friend there. Kai says that's his Maggie and Dan smirks. He completely forgot Kai dates Maggie, but he also smirks because he's hatched a new plan. Challenge time. To be honest, I don't really know what this challenge should be, so I'm just capture the flag. Paint guns again. You get zapped, then you gotta go to your flag's base point. You know the gist. You know how to play capture the flag. So, yeah. 3, 2, 1, go. Nick says him and Alessio will try to capture the flag while Linda and Maggie stay on defense. Linda asks Nick who died and made him leader, and Maggie just looks at her and shakes her head, meaning don't bother. Carol suggests Lil and Kai go and attack and the rest stay on defense, but Dan jumps in and says he's actually really good at capture the flag. He has tons of strategies which would help if he was in an attack with Lil and Kai. No one objects, of course, which leaves Ted and Carol in defense. Carol confesses that it feels almost as if Lil has fully replaced her. Carol used to be Kai's best friend. Well, in this season anyway. Linda asks Maggie for any game info. It could be useful. Maggie tells her that Nick and Alessio used an extra vote advantage to eliminate Dan, and then, well, you know, Dan team swapped. Linda says Dan never seemed like a threat. Why would they waste an extra vote on him? Maggie replies with saying Nick is messy, and all she can do now is survive till merge. Linda slaps Maggie and says you can't sulk yourself to the merge. You won't even make it past another day. You need to fight for every moment. Maggie smiles, surprised at Linda's kindness. Linda confesses in confessional she meant what she said, but she was more talking to herself rather than Maggie. She'll use Maggie for now though, but she needs to more importantly control Nick. Lil, Kai and Dan get curious about Dan's previous team. Dan says he was all controlled by Nick and he was targeting Maggie, so Dan defended her, which led to his elimination. Kai smiles at Dan for being so admirable and brave, saying he's forever in his debt. Lil smiles too. Dan seems chill. How little does she know? This could be the start of a new alliance, she thinks. Nick and Alessio see Ted and Carol guarding the flag. Alessio is happy to see Ted despite the team arrangement, because it's been a while since season 4, but now it's no time for reunions. They've got a flag to catch. Nick says he'll charge first and Alessio can use him as a human shield. Nick runs forwards but gets splattered by Carol, which makes him fall. Alessio then bolts towards the flag but gets splattered by Ted. Ted helps Alessio get up. We won't let you win that easy, pal. Neither will we, says Alessio, smiling at his friend. Nick and Alessio run back to the start so they can go back and get the flag. Lil, Kai and Dan encounter the flag guarded by Maggie and Linda. Maggie waves to Kai and Kai waves back before Maggie and Linda pull out their guns and start spraying. Dan distracts the aim onto him by shooting so Lil and Kai can make a break for it. Maggie keeps shooting at Dan while Linda turns to shoot at Kai and splats him, but it's too late. Lil has already grabbed the flag and is darting back. Maggie and Linda keep shooting and chasing Lil while Kai and Dan run back watching. On her way, she encounters Nick and Alessio who raise their guns to shoot, but they can't as they haven't reached their flag space yet, meaning Lil wins the team the challenge. Dan and Kai lift Lil into the air with rejoice. Lil is stoked to finally be safe. Seems like Dan is a good luck charm. Maggie panics about her position in the game and asks Linda to vote with her. Linda agrees, but only if it's Alessio. Nick is an easy merge shield and Maggie can probably beat Alessio in a tiebreaker due to brute force. Linda then approaches Nick and Alessio and asks who they'll vote, and Alessio answers unsurely. Linda is a good shield for merge, but useless if he himself doesn't even make it to merge. Linda worries at Alessio's hesitance, but Nick has a solution. Nick suggests Linda votes Maggie with them. This means there will be a team of 3 against a team of 5, which is realistically too small. Derek may make an early merge or even swap the teams. Linda isn't convinced though, rightfully so, but Nick is extending an olive branch and she doesn't get much choice in this anyway. So Maggie is ultimately voted out 3-1. Moving on to episode 6, here are our teams. Lil, who still has the idol, Kai, Carol, Ted and Dan, and on Team Y, Nick, Linda and Alessio. Derek orders a special announcement in the morning, much to the joy of Linda. Thank fuck it's gonna be merge. Oh, it isn't? He's ordering another musical episode? Makes sense. Linda immediately screams out how this isn't fair. Don't you know it's 3 against 5? Ted says it's deserved. Isn't their fault Team Y can't play the game like at all? Derek says fine, no more music episode. Ted and Alessia both shriek, no! Instead, they'll be doing an MMA, wrestling, boxing thingy match. Essentially anything goes, and they'll be competing for individual immunity. Those who are eliminated will be carried out the ring in stretchers. That's right, we are officially merged. Everyone rejoices aside from Kai, who's semi-pissed at Maggie not making it to merge. Derek directs them to the wrestling, boxing, MMA, everything goes ring, which I will now just simply refer to as the fighting ring. Lil Kai and Dan go into a corner in a defensive stance. Carol smirks, seeing that she's no longer included in her own alliance, and she takes that personally. It doesn't matter, she has Ted now. Nick immediately rushes towards Ted, but Carol immediately shuts him down. Knocking him out with a lunge and a rush of punches to the gut, eliminating Nick. Ted gives Carol the nod of appreciation, which makes her smile. Alessio and Linda back up from Carol in fear. There's no way they're gonna go and attack her right now, so Linda just starts punching Alessio. Alessio and Linda rightfully back up from Carol. There's no way they're gonna go and attack her now, but Linda starts punching Alessio, and Alessio just tells her to stop embarrassing herself. We should focus on getting the others out before we start attacking one another. Linda agrees. They both charge at Lil Kai and Dan, and Lil Kai and Dan both charge back. Lil pushes Linda back and then lunges at her. Linda begins to squeal. One light punch and Linda is out like a light and eliminated. Alessio exchanges punches with Kai and Dan, with Dan barely able to make any damage. But Alessio ultimately overpowers them. But before he can lunge at them, Carol, like the beast she is, lunges at him, throwing an array of punches. Alessio is out of the game. Dan and Kai make a break for it and both pin down Ted and begin to bend his fingers. Ted squeals and surrenders. He quits the challenge, on the spot. Just as that's happening, Lil lunges at Carol once more, and they wrestle for a good bit. Carol escapes and runs to get a better chance to lunge at Lil, but Lil lunges first. Carol takes a step to the right, so Lil misses Carol but dives directly into Kai, bumping into each other head first, eliminating them both from dizziness. It's now just Carol and Dan left. Dan quivers and shivers for his life. He says he'll surrender, but Carol remembers how Dan essentially replaced her on her own team. Carol grabs a stretcher and whacks it to the back of Dan's head, eliminating Dan and leaving him with a massive nosebleed. Derek smiles with glee, commenting that's gonna leave a mark. Carol has one individual immunity. Who knew she could do it? I didn't. After the challenge, Dan returns with a dog collar for some reason. It doesn't help him at all, but it's kinda like Derek just humiliating him. Lil and Kai rush to hug him, saying Carol was way too brutal. Nick walks by with a snicker, saying Dan was just way too weak. Dan reminds Nick he was first out of the challenge and he's gonna be going home tonight. That's when Carol, Ted, Linda, Alessio, no joke, appear from the shadows like the Legion of Doom and says, "Are you sure?" in perfect harmony. Lil yells at Ted in a frenzy. She thought he had stronger convictions. How can you work with someone you actually hate? Ted says he can work alongside Linda if it means he's in the majority. And if Ted's in the majority, that means you guys are the minority. The game has now truly begun. Dan and Kai begin to panic. They are fucked. But Lil has a plan. Later on in the evening, Lil approaches Nick furiously. What the hell was that? Nick says hi, but he can barely get a word in. What happened to you? Nick responds saying he's playing the game and she ought to play it harder to not get voted. Lil says the only threat to her game is his stupid alliance of doom and despair. Nick says she needn't worry. Once Dan and Kai is gone, a new majority with Lil in it will be formed. It's just a process. Lil says she doesn't give a fuck about process. That doesn't give you the right to talk down on people. You owe Dan an apology, and probably half the cast too. Nick says Lil can't be serious. Lil responds saying she's serious as ever. Nick is still so immature. To think she had hope in him. Nick says he's been trying to change, but trying to change for her is so difficult when he's also trying to change himself for the game. It's a clash of virtues. Nick apologizes to Lil. He never meant to come off as rude or arrogant. He just wants to win so badly. Lil says to save it. She asks Nick if he can at least reveal who they're all going to vote tonight, and they reveal it's going to be Dan. Lil sighs. Nick asks if him and Lil are still good, and Lil says she doesn't know. In the background, hiding behind a tree like Miriam, Dan was watching the whole entire conversation play out. Who knew Lil and Nick had such a deep connection? A connection that can be exploited. At Tribal, Lil whispers something into Dan and Kai's ear before the voting process. Derek is about to reveal the votes before Lil interrupts him to play her idol. Dun dun dun. She nullifies all votes and Dan and Nick face palms. Linda asks how did she know? And Nick looks to the sky, whistling, avoiding eye contact. Lil, Dan, and Kai all vote for Ted. Sure, it isn't Carol, but it'll sure hurt her and maybe even force her into joining Lil's alliance. If they can get over her destroying Dan, that is. Moving on to episode 7, and our cast is Lil, Kai, Dan, Carol, Nick, Linda, and Alessio, with no advantages left in the game. Lil, Kai, and Dan discuss how they're essentially fucked. No advantage, no nothing. They need to just convert one person to their side or somehow deceive the masses. Meanwhile, Nick and Linda are discussing Carol. Sure, she's an absolute unit, a challenge beast even, which is good last round, but not so much this round. We need her out because she'll soon become a problem. Linda asks why not just target Lil's alliance for another round. We wouldn't want a 3-on-3 now. Nick assures her Lil's alliance time will come, but Linda isn't so sure. Alessio and Carol are talking about Carol's previous win. She absolutely kicked ass. Carol says she hopes she didn't hurt Alessio too bad, and Alessio says no sweat, it's all good. Dan approaches Nick and Linda. Linda asks what is it about? Linda asks what is it, but Dan just stares at Nick. Nick asks Linda to give them a moment. Nick asks what does Dan want, and Dan says Nick needs to stay away from Lil. Nick said who are you to say that? Dan lies he's the man whose shoulder she cried on after hearing all these terrible things Nick said about her. Nick says what with his eyes softening. Yeah, you hurt her real bad. Did you know she only rejoined the game to rekindle with you and Ashley, but now you're acting, well, like a new Rhea. Nick says he'll talk to her. Dan chokes on his words and blurts out that he can't. Not until the challenge is over. Nick says he can talk to Lil now if he wants to talk to Lil now. Dan murmurs to himself, but loudly enough so Nick can hear too, that no wonder she's so goddamn miserable with him. Nick confesses he doubts any of Dan's claims are true. Nothing about Dan really inspires any trust, but if he can see that, why can't Lil see that? Meanwhile, Lil is now waking up and Dan's right next to her. Dan, what are you doing in my tent? Dan said Nick was gloating about Lil to him. Lil said, why would Nick do that? Dan said, I don't know. He said I was coming on to his girl. Lil laughs. There's no way. Nick has gotten too pathetic. He's not his girl either. Dan says, I know. Which is why I found it even more weird when he said he had you on a leash. Talking about some maturity thing or something. Don't worry though, I didn't believe him though. Lil said he said, what now? Yeah, I believe his exact words were, she's practically begging to be in my majority. Just sit down, Dan. You do it to yourself. Dan watched in awe as the fire lit in her eyes. He tells her to save her anger for the challenge. Talk to him later or something. Derek reveals today's challenge is Disventure Camp Trivia. You win a point each question you get right. Whoever gets the most points win. Buzz in to answer. If you get 3 questions wrong, you're out. First question. Who won season 1? Dan buzzes in. Fiore. That's 1 point for Dan. Linda says that's no fair. That question was so easy you were just testing reaction time. Derek ups the ante. Who came in 5th place in season 2? Carol buzzes in. Rosa. Who got not a single vote in season 1? Dan buzzes in. Miriam. Who's the most famous competitor in Disventure Camp? Linda buzzes in. Connor. His MySpace is quite popular to be fair, but again, it's wrong. Blah, 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 blah. Make it up as you go along, but essentially Dan wins the challenge. After the challenge, Linda, Nick, and Alessio all meet up. Alessio asks why isn't Carol here, and Linda replies by saying it's her time to be voted out. Alessio says that's stupid though, it'd now be a 3-on-3. Nick says that's okay, he'll outplay them. Alessio says, alright, let's say we eliminate Carol now, and we can't outplay Dan, Lil, and Kai. Meaning the vote would just be between us 3, who would go home. Linda says, Nick says you can't just ask that. Alessio belches he's been following Nick blindly all this time, and there's been nothing but a number. And now he's asking him to gamble his position in the game. And now Nick's asking him to gamble his position in the game. Nick says it isn't a gamble. He's protected him this far, hasn't he? Alessio sighs and walks away. Linda says he'll be a problem down the line, but Nick says Alessio will come to his senses. Alessio approaches Carol, revealing that the Alliance is trying to vote her out, and that he can't sit idly and watch anymore. Carol asks what does he suggest they do. Alessio and Carol approach Lil's alliance and Carol apologizes to Dan. Dan looks her up and down in judgment, but does shake her hand eventually. Lil says it's time to vote Nick. Kai and Dan agree, but Alessio says no. Him and Carol won't vote with him unless they're gonna vote his way. After a while, Nick bumps into Lil asking if she's okay, and Lil screams at him. How could you say all those things about me to Dan? Nick says, what? You called me a dog. Nick says, no. Why would I do that? And why would I tell Dan of all people? Can't you see he's trying to split us apart? I literally hate him. Lil says, well, he's succeeded then. His claims aren't too far from your rotten personality anyways. You may as well have said it. I have no idea what's going through your head anymore, Nick. Nick's had it up to here. He belts out at Lil that she doesn't need to know what's going through his head 24/7. He's his own man, not a kid anymore. Lil sighs as she walks away. With the way he's acting, he may as well be a kid. Anyways, tribal thingy, Linda voted out 4-2 to 1. Like 4-2-1. Lil voted Nick, so yeah. Episode 8, we're still at the merge. We've got Lil, Kai, Dan, Carol, Nick, and Alessio. Dan wakes up happy as can be. Nick is finally on the outs. Today finally could be his day. Alessio, on the other hand, is conflicted and goes over to talk to Nick. Nick judges him with his eyes, and Alessio tells Nick to relax. Nick asks how can he relax when his one friend betrayed him like this. Alessio brings up when Ivy was voted out, and Nick says it isn't the same. Alessio asks Nick what this is all really about. He isn't one to really care about him. That's for sure. Nick says he does care about Alessio, but he does guess that he's holding a bit back. Nick reveals Dan's meddled in his dynamic with Lil. Now Lil doesn't even want to think of Nick at all. Alessio sympathizes with Nick. He says if she isn't mature enough to hear you out, then maybe she isn't worth the fuss at all. Nick replies saying, but she's the woman I need. Alessio says be for real, she's like double your age. I get it, you have a thing for MILFs, but you two are practically incompatible. Nick stares at the ground, knowing Alessio is right. Nick asks what he should do about Dan then. Alessio says nothing. This game is second chances, and with second chances, you have the chance to be the person you finally want to be. Meanwhile, Carol walks up to Kai to talk about this new animal she found, but Kai is too engrossed in a conversation with Dan to hear. She walks away defeatingly and Lil sees this. Lil walks up to Carol asking to talk. Carol asks, what does Lil want now of all times? You wanted to talk about this new animal you found? Yeah, with Kai, Carol says angrily. Why not with me? I love wildlife. It's kind of my entire thing. Carol says she isn't good at talking to new people, but Lil says it's okay. She's patient. Carol begins to tell about this new moth in the camp called Clara, and Lil listens intensely. It turns out Kai and Dan were discussing how great Maggie is. Dan suggests they all go on a road trip once the game is over. Kai says he'll bring the sauce. Derek reveals next challenge will be a game of truth or dare. If you don't do the truth or the dare, you're out. It goes in turns in this order, as in who gets to ask truth or dare, and choose the person to, ask the question to. It goes in this order: Lil, Kai, Dan, Carol, Nick, and Alessio. Last person in wins immunity from the next challenge. That's right, we are doing a two-parter. Also, there's a truth machine, so you can't really lie. Everyone is rightfully worried as they almost all have their secrets, but Kai is weirdly kinda chill about this. He hasn't really deceived anyone, so this challenge should be a breeze for him. Lil's up first and asks truth or dare to Nick. Did you really say all those things comparing me to a dog and saying I was begging to be in your alliance? Nick answers he didn't confidently, and it says he's telling the truth. Nick smirks and Lil turns to look at Dan. Kai's go is next and he asks Dan, why did you lie to Lil? Dan says to get Nick out. Dan asks Nick, do you actually care about anyone at this table other than those who can't give you something? Other than those who can give you something? Nick says no, that he doesn't really care about anyone if they can't give him something. Dan says Nick is still the same old spoon-fed British rich boy from season 1, to which Nick side-eyes. Carol asks Kai if he still likes her, and Kai says of course he does. Carol smiles. Kai had no idea about Carol's worries, he wasn't trying to avoid her. Nick asks Dan if there's a line he wouldn't cross to win the game. Dan says there isn't any. Alessio dares Dan to hug Nick. Anyways, etc, lots of info gets revealed, such as Nick only caring about Alessio and Lil really. Dan doesn't really care about anyone here, and that's essentially it. Dan wins the challenge and is immune from the next part. He's done caring for others. Becoming a hacker, he's done caring for others. Becoming a hacker, he learned the bliss of solitude. The next part of the challenge is a race across the camp. Last place is eliminated. Easy as pie, right? Carol and Alessio run ahead with Lil, Nick and Kai shortly behind. Dan on the side heckles Nick saying boo, but he simply ignores it. Lil begins to apologize to Nick for not initially trusting him, but Nick says it's fine. He hasn't exactly acted like a saint throughout this entire game. He's just happy to get his friend back. Kai says, but this isn't the time to make up. There's still a challenge to win. Nick says right, and they speed across. 1 hour into the race, and the finish line is in sight for everyone. 1 hour into the race, and the finish line is in sight. Everyone is slowing down, so everyone's now at the same speed, which gives Lil an idea. Lil asks Carol if she can respect a game move, and Carol says yes, why? Before Lil brutally detaches Clara's wings, the butterfly from before, making her flightless so everyone stomps on Clara and kills her. Carol is left distraught, rightfully so. This can't be happening again. She falls to her knees and mourns Clara, making her come in dead last place, eliminating Carol from the game. Episode 9. Our remaining campers are Lil, Kai, Dan, Nick, and Alessio. This is the final stretch. It's the final 5 and tensions are rightfully high. Lil and Alessio catch breakfast and have a conversation about Nick. Alessio says Nick talks about Lil all the time. Lil asks Alessio what are his plans for the endgame, and he admits he kinda hasn't made any. He's been floating with Nick for so long that his game is essentially now just in Nick's hands. Lil says it's smart that you got here with Nick, but remember, you gotta play your own game. Something you gotta be proud of. Didn't you want to make Ted and Natalia proud? Elsewhere, Kai and Nick talk. For some reason. Nick asks Kai how he's so likable, so chill. He says because of karma and all that stuff about balance and zen, which low-key throws Nick off, but who is he to really judge? Nick apologizes about Maggie, and Kai says it's fine, and that he's winning for the both of them. Just then, Dan walks towards them. Kai, can we talk? Kai looks concerned, but Nick walks so they can have alone time. Nick has nothing to fear anymore. Dan has already ruined his own game. Kai judges Dan. You have some nerve. Dan says he hasn't done anything to Kai but play the game. Kai says you can't interfere with people's relationships. Dan reminds Kai that that's the entire point of the game. It's a literal function of it. Dan did nothing but do what everyone else did. Dan then reminded Kai that only he looked out for Maggie on their previous team. Nick was gunning for her since day 1. Is that who you really want to be best buds with now? Kai looks disappointingly at Dan. He's become so desperate. Kai asks why is Dan acting so detached to everything. Dan replies his elimination in season 1 was so left field. He did everything right, yet still got eliminated for being a genuine good guy. Kai tells Dan he should quit the game to balance his karma because he's sensing a lot of negative aura coming off from him. It's challenge time and it's a maze challenge, except you start in the middle of the maze. You need to make your way outside of the maze. Whoever gets there first gains immunity. Nick smokes to Alessio. They got this in the bag. Nick runs in one direction, but to Nick's surprise, Alessio runs in the other. Looks like he's finally playing his own game. Lil and Kai run together and Dan is left all alone. Lil tells Kai this should be a breeze. She just mazes all the time before jumping into a wall. Nick is completely lost but accidentally bumps into a crying Dan on the floor. Nick was about to laugh at him before he remembered he's on his whole healing arc. Nick says Dan's name. Dan wasn't aware anyone was nearby and screams out what more from him does he want. Nick tells Dan he's taken nothing from him, but if he has, he's sorry. Dan asks if this is another trick, but Nick says no. No more tricks. We're from the same season. We should have stuck together. We should have had each other's backs. Let's look for this exit together. Dan stops crying and agrees. They all go in different directions in that. Dan using his skills, as in like internet knowledge, because you know he's a hacker and all that for like the FBI or something like that. He finds a way out to the exit. Dan and Nick both race towards it before Alessio comes out from fucking nowhere and pushes them both onto the ground, securing victory. Dan is pissed. He really needed that immunity. Dan immediately, in a moment of desperation, says he's on the literal cusp of homelessness and he has literally nowhere to go after the show. He genuinely needs this. Alessio tells Nick to not give Dan the time of day. He's desperate and lying. Dan runs off. Later on in the day, Lil, Nick, Kai, and Alessio are having a meeting about Dan's situation. They agree there's no way he should make it past this point, but they should agree whoever wins should help Dan out if he's telling the truth. Everyone agrees. You'd think Dan would have a scene of him going, "Oh, no, I never wanted this. I never wanted to be like this. I played the game." But no, he goes on he goes on a final frenzy, looking for advantages that he knows doesn't exist. He just can't accept that he's about to lose. And he eventually does lose. He's voted off 4-1. Dan's out of the game. Episode 10, Lil, Kai, Nick, and Alessio. Final 4. Did you expect these characters to make it here? Yeah? Oh, okay. Episode 10 begins right where episode 9 finished off. Nick feels guilty about his game, but he doesn't have the luxury of sulking. He has a game to win. Lil sits beside him in silence, smiling at the man Nick is growing into. Kai and Alessio walk back to camp where they talk about the finale. They wonder if the finale will be 2 people like DC4 or 3 people like DC1. Either way, there's still a challenge for today. Derek reveals today is an all-you-can-eat contest. Yes, I got really lazy with these challenges. Whoever can eat the most food in 30 minutes gains immunity, secures a spot in the finale. That's right, our finale will be Final 3. On your marks, get set, go. Alessio starts eating like a dog with everyone closely behind him. Lil's already full up and is basically already out of the race. It's up to Kai and Nick to catch up now, with 10 minutes on the clock. Nick gets into the lead by just a bit, ahead of Alessio, but begins to get full. Alessio is back in to win it, ahead of Kai just by 3 kg, 2 mins left. Kai widens his throat and stuffs it in, winning the challenge by just 12 kilograms. I know that's not a small number. I know that's not a small amount of food. I have no idea why I said that. This means Kai has won individual immunity. Kai and Alessio discuss who to vote. After all, they can't bring a couple to the finale. Lil and Nick have both fought so hard to make it to this point, but ultimately Kai argues Lil should progress further. Alessio is hesitant, but agrees on voting for Nick. Nick and Lil have a final conversation, a friendly conversation, about how far they've both come. Lil from the bottom of her team to here, and Nick from douche to, well, less douche. They agree to give Alessio a tiebreaker that he will have to fight for. It's time for Tribal, and Derek highlights attention. Votes are tied 2-2 between Alessio and Nick. For the tiebreaker, they have to climb a mountain hill thing, and then dive into the water. Nick and Alessio at the start are neck and neck, but Nick quickly loses his footing. Alessio grabs his hand to pull him back up, despite being in a challenge. Nick and Alessio are still helping each other out. Ultimately, Alessio wins the challenge. He's far more athletic than Nick, so yeah. Nick says au revoir, and we say hello to our finalists, Lil, Kai, and Alessio. Episode 11, our final episode. Yes, I did condense a lot of stuff down. I got tired of fucking writing, and I only have a day to make this. Okay, episode 11, we get to see all the eliminated contestants, a peanut gallery, if you will, supporting our, finalists. Supporting Lil is Nick and Ashley. Supporting Kai is Carol, Maggie, Dan, and Oliver. Supporting Alessio is Ted, Ivy, and Linda. For their final challenge, they must enter this mansion with secret rooms and fucking walls that move. Oh, I make this up as I go. You gotta find one of the 3 statues hiding with Derek's face on it. Bring it to Derek, where he'll smash open the statue to reveal the key to a vault in the house, which has a check for 1 million big ones, as in dollars. All campers get ready, and then they go for the final time. They look for 2 hours before Lil finds a statue. She secretly tries to exit, but Alessio lunges at her, trying to grab the statue. They drag it from one another before Kai swoops in and picks it up and runs through the doors. He's the first to receive a key from Derek. Will Lil and Alessio follow? Alessio finds the next statue, which immediately gets snatched by Lil. Alessio and Lil grapple for it, but Alessio gets it and begins to run out the house. But then a buck from behind comes darting towards his head. Lil picks up the statue before she was about to run out, but then fell due to Alessio on the ground pulling a leg as she ran forwards. This put the statue out of bounds outside the house, so only one statue remains. In the meantime, Kai kept looking for the vault to no avail. He had begun checking under the beds in a panic. Alessio grabs another statue and darts for the doors, but Lil lunges at him for one final time, but he manages to push her off this time, exiting the house and trading in the statue for a key, eliminating Lil at 3rd place. She feels defeated but is happy she made it this far. Way better than her season 1 run. Kai and Alessio both eagerly look for the vault. Alessio checks new areas like vents that Kai didn't even consider, but Kai tells Alessio he already checked up there, so Alessio gets down wearily, but then sees Kai immediately go into the vents, so Alessio locks Kai in the vents. Kai doesn't find the vault, but he does fall into some discreet storage room, which indeed does have the vault. Kai rejoices and opens it to get the checkout, but now he has a problem. How can he cash it in? He's trapped in this room. Kai begins to move the objects in the storage room to create a ladder of sorts to re-enter the vents. He climbs back up to where he previously was, but he can't get out the vent as it's locked. Kai screams for Alessio as he begins to panic. Alessio arrives and asks if he has the check, to which Kai reveals he does. Alessio says he won't let Kai out until he hands over the check. They can split it 60-40, and Alessio will take the 40. Alessio says he won't let Kai out until he hands over the check. They can split it 60-40, with Alessio taking the 40. Kai says that's rather generous, but he will have to pass. He has earned this money. But Alessio will not judge. After 5 minutes of bargaining, Kai eventually asks Alessio what would he even do with the money. Alessio says he'll tour the world, bringing his music and art everywhere, inspiring people of the world. Kai says that's admirable, but he can't give this money. Alessio says fine, then he'll just have to take it. Alessio opens the vent hatch. Which makes Kai fall to the floor, making the check fall out of his hands. Alessio smiles. This is his chance. He grabs the check and runs, not before Kai throws a book directly at Alessio's head to make him trip up. Kai picks up the check and runs outside to Derek, becoming the winner of Disventure Camp Second Chances. Fucking finally, I'm done with this video. You don't understand. I fucking hate this. Now, evaluation time. Now is the time I talk about why I wrote the characters the way I did. I'll start with Oliver. I never really intended for him to go far. 4 slots means it's a small cast, and Oliver isn't really a contestant. He's a staff member, and I couldn't really bring anyone else from season 2, so I just made him first boot. I forgot what I did with Ashley, but really again, she's a literal all-star, so she already had her second chance. So again, she didn't need too much importance. With Ivy, initially, I no joke wanted her to go really far, but with a cast of 12 and me making everyone more important than her, I kind of wrote myself into a wall. I really wanted her, or Lil, or Maggie, or Ted to win, but that was before I began writing. Everyone slightly exaggerated. So yeah. And I had to write everyone exaggerated. They're pre-mergers. They weren't given too much to work with. The remaining characters are like what I would call the true cast, because they all at least do something. I'll talk about Ted first. Man, did I love him in season 4, but I completely butchered him here. I'm not gonna lie. I think me not writing each episode out like a script really worsened the perception of him in my season, because, well, you don't see the funny shit he does, because it doesn't really progress the story at all. You would mostly forget he's here, and he doesn't do much aside from beef Linda and hide behind Carol. Speaking of Carol, I semi-mid-season forgot she was a Carol, and I did the same thing with a lot of characters. I begin to write her like some crazed Eva, and I'm not too entirely sure why. The fact I had a day or two to make this all probably didn't give me much thinking time. Her standout episode was episode 6, and I'm happy. I wanted her and Kai to be a duo so badly, but Kai low-key fit a little better, so yeah. Linda is a character that exists in this season. I forget what she does, but I do remember she gets team swapped with Dan, and essentially does nothing but becomes a Nick yes man. I should have made her more of a wild card. I'll keep that in mind for my next one. Maggie doesn't do too much either, but get mentioned by Kai and have that alliance with Dan and Nick. She stayed as much as she needed, I guess. I was writing her as a slow burn character that would pop off at merge, but so much happened at merge anyways, so not much of a loss. Though, if she did stay, trust me, it would have improved the season. I was writing her to win, I'm pretty sure. If she stayed, though, it would have greatly improved the season, because I was writing her with the intention of winning, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. I think the only reason I eliminated her was because I wanted Linda to do something, because she hadn't really done anything. Also, Kai was supposed to act crazed towards Alessio, Nick, and Linda for eliminating Maggie, but I quickly decided against it, because, like, I don't know, Kai's kind of chill. So, yeah, speaking of Kai, I really enjoyed him in the pre-merger, but I think that's because I sort of just wrote him as himself. He doesn't do too much but support people, like Rosa Maria does, the GOAT. I'm happy he won. Now, before I get into the big three, I'll talk about Alessio. I really had no idea what to do with him at the start, so I let the game change him instead of him change the game. And I think it paid off. I have no idea if Alessio would canonically act like any of this, but I can see it. From following other people's games into owning his own game in the final two, that is just... that's cinema, guys. That's cinema. Now for Lil, Nick, and Dan. Oh, jeez. These are probably my most egregious characters ever, because they really aren't in character. But I don't care, I love them regardless. Well, I do love Lil. I love this Lil less than actual Lil, to be fair. I really enjoyed pre-merge Dan. He did everything I wanted him to do, which was different from Season 1 Dan, but his elimination has always irked me. In Season 1, think of this current Dan as my rage. Dan is meant to be smart. He's a fucking FBI hacker person thingy. He's resourceful, and I wanted to show that off. Y'all may have not liked his villain manipulator route, and some late game stuff he did which made no sense, such as, I don't know, lying to Nick and Lil. It kind of made no sense. But again, I made this in 2 days. My aim was to finish this, not to perfect it. Apologies, but my mic quality is about to get a lot worse. I really like his dynamic with Nick, even though halfway through I did forget why they even hated each other, so I was just hoping the viewer would also forget too, and we would just roll with it. Also about Lil x Nick, I wanted it to happen this season so badly, you can tell I wanted it to happen. But then I completely shafted it, and realized I really wouldn't know how to write that in. So I just backpedaled out of that. Okay, also while I was writing, I thought I wrote Nick way smarter than he was, and way more manipulatable, just way more evil. I thought I wrote Nick way more evil, but now I'm saying the stuff he did aloud, he kind of just did nothing, I think. Anyways, I love how Nick and Lil's friendship is so, like, love-coded, like Cat Noir and Ladybug. Anyways, Nick, the guy on the thumbnail. Thanks, Our Guts, for the art. Yeah, this Nick isn't Season 1 Nick at all. I kind of kept confusing Nick with Finn and Brad from Reality Resort. I'm not even joking. And I kind of just left it. Okay, this Nick reminds me of Spencer Lawrence, and I like that. He's kind of just doing whatever, but he is smart. He's smart. This Nick is smart. I thought if Nick was to return, he could be smart. But then I remembered the Nicky Dicky Doodah channel exists, and he's actually dumber now than he was before. So sorry, Nick fans, I got a little carried away. This will probably be my only My Way ever as well. But yeah, like, sub, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, and hopefully the editing for this video is good, because I doubt I'll edit at all. Au revoir.